Hi and welcome. My name is Kateryna Samuelson. I'm certified executive coach specializing in helping leaders navigate the internal barriers that limit their external impact. I spent over 10 years working in both private and public companies, and for the past 5 years I've been coaching executives and senior leaders through psychological patterns that show up in everything from hiring decisions to strategic position. And today I'm starting a series of webinars called Confident Hiring, Lead Without Fear. And I'm going to start it with a simple question that lots of leadership consultants and coaches won't even touch. Have you ever avoided hiring someone because you were genuinely afraid that they make you obsolete? Just think about it. I'm not talking about someone who is overqualified for the position. I'm talking about someone who you're genuinely afraid of. Afraid that they build relationship with senior leadership and position themselves to bypass you. Afraid that they see how things really work in your department and expose all the gaps in your approach. Afraid that they start connecting with other departments and suddenly you'll become a middleman that nobody really needs. Or just afraid that they will leave in 6 months with all the knowledge that you shared with them and you will look like you made a bad judgment call. Well, if you're nodding right now, you're not alone. Let me describe a few scenarios for you that probably you lived in. You're hiring for your team, you narrowed it down to 2 strong candidates, and candidate A has solid skills. He's grateful for the opportunity, they'll follow you lead, they won't question your decisions, and they will need your guidance everywhere to get up to speed. But when you think about managing them, you feel in control, feels manageable. Then there is candidate B, exceptional credentials. They came from one of your competitors. During the interview, they ask you really strategic questions, and they clearly have relationships with seniors in the industry. When you imagine them on your team, it feels a little bit different. I would say something less comfortable. But let's be honest what just happened. You made a political calculation disguised as business decision. And I want you immediately stay in the weeds because candidate A needs your direction everywhere, constantly. Your strategic capacity is limited to your own bandwidth because you can't truly delegate anything mission critical. And they're executing, but only when you point them out what needs to be done. Within 6 months, you're working 60 hours a week, while candidate A leaves at 5. Your peer directors have built stronger teams, and you're starting to fall behind on lots of cross-functional initiatives. The paradox of defensive hiring. You hired for security and actually created the exact vulnerability you were trying to prevent. Now I want to know what's actually happening beneath the surface of all these patterns. When you feel threatened by a candidate, your psyche deploys what psychologists would call defensive mechanisms. These are unconscious strategies your mind uses to protect your ego from uncomfortable truth. They happen automatically, faster than conscious thoughts, and they're sabotaging your hiring decisions. Let me walk you through 4 most common defense mechanisms. So first one, we have rationalization. This is when you create logical sounding business reasons for what actually are emotional, ego protective decisions. You tell yourself they're overqualified when they're actually intimidating. You say culture fit is important when really they make you uncomfortable. You worry they're Flight risk, when really you're afraid they'll outshine you, they will leave you looking inadequate. For example, you interview someone who worked at top competitor. Your rational brain says they won't be satisfied with our pace and resources. Your defensive brain actually saying everyone will compare my state school to their elite backgrounds. Second, projection. This is when you attribute your own uncomfortable feelings onto other person. You feel insecure, so you perceive them as arrogant. You feel threatened by their confidence, so you decide they won't take feedback well. And you worry that you've been challenged, so you interpret their questions as them being difficult to manage. Let's see example on this one. A candidate asks probing questions, like we discussed before, and they're questioning your strategic decisions. And you think they'll seem like they're combative. In reality, they're demonstrating strategic thinking. Your projection is labeling their strengths as a personality flaws, and that again is dangerous as defensive hiring. Third one, displacement. And fourth one, intellectualization. Well, here's the important part. These defensive mechanisms are completely normal. Everyone has them. And the goal of our webinars, not to eliminate them, just to recognize them when they run in the show, and when you notice that you're rationalizing, projecting, displacing, intellectualizing your decisions, that's the moment you pause yourself and ask, am I evaluating the person or am I protecting myself? And that question will change everything. Let's dive deeper. Let's get into understanding what are you actually responding to? What are your threat responses? When you feel threatened by the candidate or a team member, you're typically operating from one of three fear-based patterns. And let me just break them down for you without any corporate jargon. The first pattern is what I call victim stance. This is the I'm powerless if they're too capable mindset. Think. That's how it might sound in your head. If I hire someone with real executive presence, the leadership team would want to work with them, not me. So when you're hiring from this place, you hire people who are clearly operating beneath your level. You avoid anyone who might look you less essential to the company than they are. You create dependency, and they need you for access to all the connection and information. And what's the cost for this? Your team can only function when you're present. You made yourself simultaneously indispensable and completely stuck. I'm sure you recognize yourself in some of this. And second pattern is defensive stance. I need to stay in control so no one can undermine me. This sounds like if they talk directly to VP, they're going to tell a different story than mine and I'll lose credibility. When you hire from this stance, you hire people who can dominate intellectually. You avoid anyone with strong strategic opinions of their own. You just create information silos, everything flows through you. So what's the cost of that? You spend all your energy maintaining control instead of actually driving results. Innovation dies because challenging you becomes career suicide. And nobody wants to be that person who questions the boss. The third pattern is rationalization. I have good, solid business reasons for my fear-based decisions. Sounds familiar, right? This one, subtle because it sounds so reasonable. They're overqualified, they'll definitely leave in 6 months, and the translation really is, I'm afraid they'll outgrow me and make me look bad. What's the cost for all of this? You build a mediocre team and genuinely believe you made the right call. Then 2 years later, you're sitting in performance review, wondering why your function consistently underperforms against targets. And the common thread all of these patterns have, that they're operating from the scarcity. They all built on the belief that someone else's competence is just diminishes yours. That organizational power and influence are finite resources. That you can protect your position by limiting people around you. And here's what actually happens when you lead from that place of scarcity. You work harder than everyone else. Your team stays dependent on you for everything, and you have no stretch. You can scale your impact, and you become the ceiling for your function's performance. And eventually, not immediately, but eventually, leadership will recognize this. So the alternative approach I call strategic leadership. You operate from abundance, and you understand that talent people multiply your impact. They don't divide it. That your value comes from what you build, not what you control, and that the leader who actually develops other leaders is the one who actually rises in the company. You cannot protect your position by limiting the people around you. You can only protect your position by making other people successful. The most secure leaders I know, the ones who are genuinely confident in their roles, they all do the same thing. Because they're builders, not gatekeepers. And organizations promote builders. They tolerate gatekeepers until they can't anymore, and then they remove them. So, the question for you to sit on: do you want to be the leader that people want to work for, or do you want to be the leader that people want to work around? One of those is a career path, and the other one is dead end. So in our next session, we're going to go deeper into where these patterns actually start from. Because they didn't start when you become manager or director or leader. They started much earlier than that. And more importantly, we're going to talk about how to interpret these patterns in real time. When you're actually in the hiring process, when the stakes feel high and the fear feels real. Well, thank you for your honesty today. This work takes courage, and I'll see you next time.